Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to show you how to sort out this problem here, where you can see that the stitching here on the serger is not looking very good, and I suspect this is going to be a reasonably quick fix because I can actually see the problem already. So yeah, take a close look. I'm not sure if it'll come through on the camera, but you might be able to see the problem with this. And this video relates to sergers in general. You know, this one just happens to be a Janome. It's the Mylock 644D model, and we've got the tension dials up the top here, the type that you lay the thread down through the channels, and the thread goes in between the tension discs here. Now there can be several reasons that an overlocking seam can look a little bit tatty like this here. I'll change the colour of the top looper thread so that you can actually get a better look at what's happening here. If I just come closer here, you might be able to see the problem, but let's just raise the mast here, and I'm just going to put in a sort of a sky blue type or a light blue on the top looper here. I'll just spin the machine around so you can see this a bit better. Now, a good thing about loopers is that the eye of the looper is big enough to accommodate a small knot. So a good trick, if you don't already know, is to just cut the thread there and then place your new thread on. So if you're changing colour, this is a very handy tip. Lay the threads together like that, you know, reasonably even there. Just give it a wee twist there to hold it together. So I literally just loop it round. It's a bit hard because I'm doing this from behind the camera, and just put the tail through the loop there. Just what I call a granny knot, and then just tighten that, pull that through. So there we've just got a really basic little knot there, and that is, you know, a small enough knot to go through the eye of the looper. You can manually pull that through, or you can actually sew it through. I'd be a little bit careful about sewing it through because I can see another problem here too. So there's two problems here. But what I was saying is I'd be a bit careful about sewing the knot through, because if the knot that you've put in the thread is too big to go through the looper eye, it could strain the looper, and, you know, potentially a worst case scenario, it could actually break the looper. So I'd be tempted to just pull the thread through. So what I'll do here is just see if we can pull the threads. You'll see the blue coming through. Here's the other problem, which it'll probably become a little bit clearer in a second when the blue thread comes through. I'll just get you in for a closer look there. A little bit of a tangle here. Sometimes just easier to trim the threads there. Actually, I'll take the foot off. Makes it a little bit easier as well if you've got a removable sole presser foot there. Sometimes makes things a bit easier. Get yourself a good pair of tweezers, and we will, yeah, this is not threaded correctly. There's the blue coming through. You see the diagram here. We're not using the blue here, that's the needle thread. We're looking at this brownie coloured here. It's brownie coloured, and you can see that it's not following the correct path. So in the diagram it shows you it's coming down from the tensioner down to a thread guide. That's this thread guide here, and you can see once it's through the thread guide it goes down to a little loop here, and then back up behind a guide and through the looper eye, the upper looper. Now it's not doing that, it's just going straight to the looper eye. It's just going straight from the guide to the looper eye. So pretty much we just bring that down, hook it in through there, hook it in behind the other guide here at the top of the looper shaft there, and just pull that, and there you can see that's the correct threading there. And while we're here, might as well check the lower threading. and that looks good. See, you'll notice also that there's color coding. Lower looper thread has this sort of a pale green color here. I'll take you through the lower looper threading because it is quite important, or it's very important when you're having issues. So I'll just unthread that. Now the key to threading the lower looper is make sure that the needle threads are no longer around the looper. So pull the needle threads out here. And what you've got to be aware of, get you a better angle on that, is if you do turn the machine, the lower looper will pick the needle threads up again. And if you go and thread the lower looper like that, you'll have all sorts of problems. You'll get about 3 stitches and the lower looper thread will break. I've done a dedicated video on that actually, and I'll link it in up the top here, somewhere up around here. So make sure you unthread that. If you turn the machine at all, 1 revolution, the looper will pick threads up. Just make sure you do that again. Okay, so now the lower looper is ready for threading. And nice and easy on this one. We'll come down, so we've come down through the guide here. Pull that into the first guide. You'll also notice on this particular model we've got a guide here that's movable, and we've got a 3/4 at the top and we've got a 2 at the bottom. So we're set at the top at the moment, that's for 3 and 4 thread operation, and down to the bottom there, that's for 2 thread operation. I won't go through that today, we're just going through the threading and troubleshooting here. So just thread through that guide there. Another little tip if you're threading an overlocker, or sorry, I call them overlockers. They're called overlockers here in New Zealand. So yeah, apologies for that, but yeah, your serger threading. Little tip is you can double the thread over here and then just twist it, and it'll make a nice sort of strong thread end there. That's nice and easy to get through some of these round guides here. Through that guide there, and then you can flip this little guide here up, and you'll see that this here popped out along with this here. It just gives you better access. I'll show you that again, like that, and you pop the thread around behind this guide here, and same with this one up here, like so. So it goes front to back on both of those guides. And then you pop the little guide back into its position there, and that effectively threads the left hand side of the looper, the lower looper, that you can't see here. It's pretty hard to get to. And then you just straight through front to back through the right hand lower looper eye there, and then we're set to go there. Now, when setting up for sewing with a serger, I like to, if I can, I like to pop the presser foot sole off if possible. If not, it's no problem, I'll show you. So what I would do is, if I've got the removable presser foot, I bring the threads out to the left hand side of the machine and pop the presser foot on with the threads under presser foot there, and just pick up the presser foot, clip that on like that, and you'll see, just make sure none of those threads are trapped in the little presser foot mounting clamp here, and you should be able to just pull those threads. So all 4 threads, or if you're running a 3 thread, the 3 threads will be coming out the left hand side here. So if you can't remove this, the best thing to do here is to lay your threads out the back of the machine to the left. You can actually probably start just sewing from there, sewing your seam from there, but you know, if you want to be 100% sure that your seam's going to start correctly, I think it's a really good idea to just bring your threads around the back of the presser foot there. So come straight out the back of the machine. Swing that round for a better look there. So you'll see the threads there, they're coming straight out the back. And you could probably start sewing there as well, but probably the best thing to do would be to lift the presser foot and to guide the threads under the presser foot. So just bring the threads under the foot like that, so that the threads are directly going under the foot and not sort of catching on any of this other part over here. You just want these threads coming out to the left here. And you should be pretty safe to start going from there. In fact, you can chain out from there. And there we go. We're ready to start sewing. As I say, it looked like there were two problems. Well, there's definitely at least one problem. I know that the threading was incorrect. Try a test seam here, and you can see there that the bottom thread, it's a bit hard to see with it just being white, but the bottom thread was coming right around to the top. This is the lower looper thread here. And you can see that it's meeting with the upper looper thread sort of halfway along the seam here, whereas it should be meeting right on the edge there. Now just rethreading the machine there, the upper looper, might have solved the problem, but I think we've still got another issue here. Now I haven't serviced this machine either, so that's why it's sounding a little bit rough. So yeah, it still hasn't cured the issue. You can see that the upper looper thread in blue there is still looking a little bit tight, or in fact the lower looper thread, this is a dead giveaway, is looking very loose and loopy. So here we have a view of the tensioner dials. So we've got the two needle tensioners here, we've got the upper looper tensioner and the lower looper tensioner. And you can see, as before, the lower looper is the problem child here. It's all loopy. Can you see the problem? You might be able to just see a bit of thread jammed in there. Look at that, jammed in the lower looper tension discs. And that will be holding the discs open and not allowing the discs to clamp on the lower looper thread. Okay, let's try it out now. Looking a lot better. You can see there that it's still not quite meeting on the edge of the fabric there. These two upper looper and the lower looper threads should interlock right on the edge there. This is just probably a general tension issue. But as part of the service, I will deep clean these discs. Now there could be still a little bit of lint or even remnants of thread jammed in these tension discs. So that'll be part of the service. But you can see here that the tension's got a little bit, you know, we can go to 4 maybe and just see what sort of effect that's got there. And it's looking a lot better. Now what you can see here is you've still got loops here, but at least they're meeting on the edge. And if they're meeting on the edge, there's a couple of ways we can handle this. We could tighten both the lower looper and the upper looper thread tensions, or I think more than likely it's just that the blade is cutting too close to the needle threads. So it's cutting too close in this direction of pointing of my tweezers. And what we can do is we can move the blade out slightly so that it fills in this gap. So this fabric seam here is just too narrow. The blade's cutting it too narrow, and it's leaving too much space in there, free space. So let's just try adjusting the blade a little bit there. So on this particular model, you can get access to the blade just by swinging the left cover out here, and we've got this adjuster knob here. Your machine model may differ. Have a look in the manual if you're not too sure, or you know, take a look online. You might be able to find a specific setting for your machine. But this one, it's pretty straightforward, just a matter of adjusting this here. And what that does is I'll just open the front cover here and I'll just remove that foot there, because just so that you can see a little bit easier there. You've got the lower blade here, that's a stationary blade there, and you've got the upper blade here. This is the one that moves up and down and does the trimming, a little bit like a pair of scissors really. And what we can do is we can move this stationary blade to the right slightly by turning this knob here on the left. And you can see it moving there. So let's just come out a little bit there. That's probably about 1 millimeter, maybe a little bit more, 1/8 of an inch. These sorts of adjustments are a little bit of trial and error sometimes, so you know, don't be too scared to make adjustments. I think the key to making adjustments on your serger is just to maybe note down the starting point. If you're adjusting tensions and they're not quite right but they're close, I would just note on a piece of paper where you started, and you can always, if something goes completely wrong, you can always at least set these back again. And same with the blade there, just take notes really. And let's see, here we go there. That is looking a lot better. Okay, the thread's not quite meeting on the very edge there. If anything, I would loosen the upper looper thread there. This one here, probably just pop that down to 2. If you have to deviate from what they call the standard settings, you know, which is around about 3 on this particular machine, yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about that, because if you put a different thread on, it might affect the tension, so you compensate for it with adjusting the tensions just out of the norm slightly sometimes, like so that there, you know, down on 2 there. I wouldn't worry too much. If you find that you have to sort of, you know, have the tension way out of whack, you know, like way up here on 7 or 8, or right down at 0 or 1 like that, well then, yeah, maybe you might want to get the machine looked at. But generally, if it's within cooey or within range of these, see 2 and 4 there, probably okay there. And there we go. And it's looking pretty good there. Now, just to quickly go through one of the other problems that I do find with threading a serger is quite often, if we just pop that thread out of the tensioner there, quite often the thread is not pulled into the tensioner properly, and it just lies around the outside. You can see, I can just feel that it's got hardly any tension because the discs are not actually clamping the thread. Hopefully you can see that okay, but as I'm pulling this blue thread here, you'll see that the thread, you can actually see the thread, so it's not actually down in between the clamping discs there, and it's just sitting around the outside, and it's got hardly any tension on it. That might be better demonstrated with the lower tension here. I'll pull that out of the tension disc there, just lay that across there. So you can see there we're back to a similar scenario as we had before, and you'll see there that the lower thread, the lower looper thread is coming right around. There's hardly any tension on it at all. It's all loopy, it's not meeting on the edge of the seam there. It's looking pretty ratty there. And that's all because this thread here has not been pulled into the tensioner. So a good thing to do when you're threading is when you're coming down through the tensioner here, actually I'll demonstrate this with the blue. When you're threading the machine, it's a good idea to hold the thread at the back and at the front and pull it down in between the discs like that. Make sure that those threads, all of the 4 threads, or 3 if you're using 3 thread, go down in between these discs here. That's really important. I see that a lot when I'm servicing machines. Just make sure that those threads are pulled into those discs there. And there we go, looking a lot better. So that's about it for this one. I just thought I'd show you how you can troubleshoot some of the issues with inconsistent thread tension on a serger. And we found that the top thread wasn't threaded correctly. The top thread also, the lower thread tensioner had a bit of thread jammed in it, and the bight of the cutting blade needed adjusting as well. So just a few things that can get your machine from the seam looking pretty loopy and horrible to a nice consistent seam there. So I hope you found that helpful and interesting. Thank you very much to my patrons on Patreon, and thank you very much for watching.